I was there.
I'm going to run the intro one more
Dreams
time
came
for you
off the
guys.
assembly line. I was there when they began welding the things into their armor, bolting on the wheels. Pouring in the jelly. I was there when they turned the juice on. And I was there when the things began to twitch.
That goes so fucking hard, dude. A podcast has no business having an intro that goes that fucking hard. Anyway. It's funny how essential aesthetics and art is to ideology critique. Yeah, it's really good. And they do a really good job with that. I love I've talked about this with respect to Travis Scott before. It's such a weird thing to talk about, but I do love when you can tell when someone has like a genuine love for like all aspects of creation. Where Brandon himself has done a lot of the composing for the music as well, like or for the podcast as well. It's like very well put together. Narrated by Bob's Burgers, lol. Yeah, H. John Benjamin. Funny to see him there. Anyway, how can you read anything when it goes so fast? I'm crazy with it. I'm nutty with it, dude. I'm nutty mode. Okay, I'm nutty, buddy. But all right. So we have a lot of news to cover that I haven't gotten to yet, so we're going to do that now. Okay, let's get started. First and foremost, I want to watch the Dylan Danis saga, however the fuck you say it, and then we'll get into Vivek Ramaswamy popping off all over. I feel like Vivek is going to have a good... You know what? Let's talk about Maggie Haberman and Trump, Georgia first, but then we'll get into all this other stuff. Okay. Oh, is the podcast is out? Oh, yeah, this one.
Just me and you. Well, it's usually on time, but right now.
Yeah, what's going on?
He's coming. I swear.
Yeah, the podcast. The reason why I had to end stream early the other day is because I did this Zach and Valid Show podcast. You can check that out as well. Let's get started with let's go back to the Trump thing for a second.
Joining me here, CNN senior legal analyst Ellie Honig, also CNN political analyst, Trump biographer, and New York Times senior political correspondent Maggie Haberman, and in Atlanta, Michael Moore, who, like Ellie, was a federal prosecutor, in his case, former U.S. attorney for the Middle District of Georgia. Maggie, I mean, this ruling now from the judge warning about Trump can't threaten anybody, a witness, this is kind of an odd line. I mean, he's running against Mike Pence. If he tweets something negative about Mike Pence, where's the line here?
We are in unprecedented territory.
My suspicion is that this is the real reason why Trump didn't want to appear on stage with Mike Pence and didn't do the debate. Not because he's like afraid of giving people clout or whatever, but mostly because I think he was maybe not interested in asking the judge for permissions ahead of time and then possibly getting rejected by the judge for appearing on a debate stage. It doesn't matter if Trump gets attacked by everyone, chat. Trump thrives in that environment. He don't give a fuck about being attacked by everyone. He knows everyone's going to attack him. The real issue is the legal complications that the legal complication that Trump would have, as though because there's an ongoing active case, and one of the main people on stage is literally a key witness. Someone said rejection sensitive dysphoria. No, I don't think that's the whole point. I don't think he's afraid of rejection. I do believe that I will be streaming the debate tomorrow. Yes, I do believe that it's because he appearing next to Mike Pence would require additional legal permissions, and I don't think that they wanted to risk asking for it and then getting that denied by the courts. But that's pure speculation, and I'm welcoming counters to that. If you think I'm wrong, go right ahead. But I don't think that. I personally believe that, because I've thought about this a lot. I just don't see any other reason as to why Trump would deny going on this debate stage. Because he's so good, and he knows he's so good, and this would have galvanized him in the eyes of his base of support.
Territory, and we have, I think, grown tired of saying that, but it really happens to be true here. I think we're going to find out where the line is, and I think that as we have seen with former President Trump over and over again with his social media feed and his commentary, he tends to test exactly where that line is. We have seen him do it in the federal cases against him. I think we will see him do it here, but you are right. It's a very broad stroke, and so I don't know quite what this is going to look like. What Trump's lawyers have said over and over is that his free speech rights are being targeted, and he is the front runner for the Republican nomination. It's impossible to divorce all of this from that context.
Yeah, Elliot, I mean, he tweeted recently about Mike Pence, calling him little Mike Pence or little Pence, and said he's, gone to the dark side. That's,
I don't think he's afraid of Christie.
Intimidate other political candidates all the time. Again, where's the line?
Well, that's precisely the difficulty here. I think there's some tweets that are clearly over the line. Let's remember what Donald Trump said on Truth Social about Jeff Duncan, for example, right? Clearly attacking him, clearly connected to the case. But Mike Pence is a little more ambiguous because, as you say, they're engaged in a political campaign against each other right now. And so prosecutors and judges are going to have to use their judgment. But for every close call, like this example with Mike Pence, there have been many that are far over the line. And really, the question is going to be, how tightly do prosecutors and the judge police this? Because everyone in this case has been threatened somehow.
But look, the former president, he walks that line constantly. I mean, he intentionally, tweeting out, you come for me, I'll come for you. Again,
well, this is also where you're going to see, and I'm sorry, Anderson, but this is also where you're going to see, and tell me if you disagree with me on this, but you're going to see the difference between what the state judges and prosecutors are going to be comfortable with versus the federal prosecutors, because so far we have seen, at least in the federal cases, I think a pretty wide amount of latitude given so far. They are clearly signaling in Georgia they don't want to do that here. But again, you are talking about multiple cases in multiple jurisdictions. There's going to be a collision.
Michael, I mean, you know Georgia well. Do you see the judge there being tougher on the social media stuff?
Well, I'm glad to be with all of you. This is a fairly new judge. He's been on the bench for just a short time, less than a year. It'll be interesting to see how he decides to run it. I will agree with this premise, and that is the line that's going to have to be walked will be about what he can say politically versus and defend himself politically versus what he can do to sort of throw gas on the fire on this criminal case. And so I think that's going to be the danger, and the danger will be the prosecutors filing too many motions or making too many requests to sanction him in some way and then getting shot down. So hopefully they will reserve sort of the nuclear option of having a bond revocation or something like that until he does something that is clearly an overt threat. Encouraging people, responding to a tweet, or responding to something that's politically been said to him, or a challenge that's been made by one of his political opponents, I just don't think is going to be enough given the nature of the case and the facts that we are in the middle of a campaign. And there's just no way to divorce this case from that. So once we acknowledge it, I think it kind of guides how we proceed.
And Ellie, what is the penalty and what is the nuclear option? Michael was talking about revoking a bond.
Yeah, the penalties can be increased bond amounts. You can say you have to post more money now. The penalties can include other measures like electronic monitoring, house arrest. This is all in a normal case. Up to and including the nuclear option would be imprisonment. I mean, I don't think there's any real.
That would be so fire, but it won't happen, especially because Secret Service would have to go to prison with him, which is a really funny thing to think about. like, it's really funny to think about because it's like, it has the makings of the funniest fucking comedy show. You know what I mean? That's literally like that's like a premise for a show. Once the writer's strike is done, I'm telling you, someone is making a TV show where the president goes to jail and they have to like go with their Secret Service agents.
Realistic chance Donald Trump gets locked up for violating bail, but it happens. It happens in real life. It just happened to Sam Bankman-Fried, as one example, in the Southern District of New York. So, but the collision here of politics and law is so complicated for exactly that reason.
Yeah, I mean, so Maggie, he's not going to go to this debate. He's said he's not going to go to any debates.
Yeah, and who knows what exactly that means. It was a sort of ambiguous Truth Social post, but I do think that he feels as if he is up in the polls. I think the question is going to be whether he can help himself. I don't think he wants to go to the Reagan Library debate in September. We'll see if he does or doesn't, but, you know, he has all sorts of issues with the people who run the Reagan Library. After that, I think it's an open question, both whether he would want to go and who will even be on stage at that point. Look, he's not as strong in the first two early states, in the polling of those states, as he is nationally. I think that the national number looks very different, but he's still pretty strong in the early states. And so I think that his folks are going to stick to that and see, you know, very little upside in him going.
You know, Michael, the argument made by, you know, Chris Christie, others is, well, if he's weak in Iowa and New Hampshire, if he doesn't do as well there, then that's going to be a cascading domino effect in South Carolina and elsewhere. Do you buy that argument?
Well, I think that's probably as much of a wish as it is an argument that he's making there. I see this Trump machine sort of moving forward full speed ahead. Down here in Georgia, you've got Trump flags flying up in the North Georgia area left and right. And some of them never been taken down and some are new going up. So I really don't think that the question will be his performance necessarily in those other states if it hurts him, because I just see him. I think the primary is his to lose right now.
And Michael, we've already, you know, we're seeing threats now against employees of the Fulton County Sheriff's Office. How much does that complicate security concerns around the actual turning in later this week?
It's going to be complicated. I mean, remember that law enforcement is accustomed to having people make threats at them. They spit at them. They fight them when they get arrested. They're used to that kind of thing. But this is unusual because of the nature of the publicity, the fact that it is so public, and we're already dealing with a situation where the courthouse is basically cordoned off, and it looks like Fort Knox around there, and that's something that they've not been accustomed to either. So from the jail to the courthouse and all of that, the coordination between the Secret Service and local law enforcement is going to be important. But
what law enforcement's not used to is arresting a brave patriot that's done everything right and they indicted him. Especially when everything he did right revolved around helping our law enforcement community.
Kinds of threats are different than when we're talking about threatening grand jurors or threatening jurors, threatening witnesses. I think law enforcement, by and large, they are used to dealing with people who are recalcitrant and who want to say crazy things and do crazy things. That's what the nature of their job is. But this is different in that it is. It's not necessarily dealing with one source of a threat. It's dealing with sort of a source that spreads out its tentacles and causes other people to do crazy things, and that's what they've got to watch out for.
Yeah. Michael, appreciate it. Maggie, Ellie as well. Thank you so much.
A report in the Atlantic that you gave an interview to, you said, quote, "I think it is legitimate to say how many federal agents were on the plane."
Hashtag Vivek Ramaswamy takes down Caitlin Collins on hashtag CNN. Love the titling, love the rip on this. I think Vivek is the rising star. I don't think that he will like end up winning anything, obviously, for the reasons I've stated time and time again. Most important one being that he is an Indian man running in the Republican primaries. And, of course, Republicans are still going to have a lot of racist hangups towards that sort of thing. But he is very clever. He's a bit like the Pete Buttigieg, but not really, because I think Pete Buttigieg spoke in circles. Vivek is smart enough to tell you, he's smart enough to be like, I hate woke culture. You know what I mean? Like he does a good job articulating his positions, but he also very clearly would tell you like what he fucking thinks is what the crowd wants to hear.
Planes that hit the Twin Towers. Maybe the answer is zero. It probably is zero for all I know, right? I have no reason to think it was anything other than zero. But if we're doing a comprehensive assessment of what happened on 9/11, we have a 9/11 commission. Absolutely, there should be an answer the public knows the answer to. Explain to me what you meant there.
This is really, it's funny. I mean, The Atlantic is playing the same game as CNN. It's funny. What I said is on January 6th, I do believe that there were many federal agents in the field and we deserve to know who they are. On 9/11, what I've said is that the government lied. And this is incontrovertible evidence, Caitlin. The government lied about Saudi Arabia's involvement. There was a Saudi spy named al-Bayoumi who they lied, and the government lied, and the 9/11 Commission lied. We know that because declassified reports in 2021 revealed that al-Bayoumi was indeed. What's that?
Yeah, the report that President Biden declassified.
Yes.
But your quote here, are you telling me that the quote
20
is wrong
years later,
here?
yeah.
But are you telling me that your quote is wrong here because it says how many federal agents were on the planes that hit the Twin Towers?
Yeah, when I actually, and this is just lifting the curtain on how media works again, I asked that reporter to send the recording because it was on the record. He refused to do it. But we had a free-flowing conversation. The truth is there are lies the government has told about 9/11, but it's not the ones that somebody put in my mouth. It's the one that I articulated, which is that Saudi Arabia, absolutely, their intelligence was involved in 9/11. And that's a difficult thing you're not supposed to say. The facts back that up. Separately, as it relates to January 6th, same story all over again. There were federal agents in the field. I think they've lied about how many there were, and we, the people, deserve the truth, despite the layers of distortion that exist in the media to prevent us from getting it.
You're saying that you were misquoted here. So we will take you at your word. Yes. You're saying that you were misquoted here. But you were asked another time recently about whether or not 9/11 was an inside job. This is what your response was.
9/11 inside job or exactly how the government tells us?
Okay, this is sad because, like, they're just making him more likable. Like, what's happening? Like, what the fuck is CNN doing?
I don't believe the government has told us the truth. Again, I'm driven by evidence and data. What I've seen in the last several years is we have to be skeptical of what the government does tell us. I haven't seen evidence to the contrary, but do I believe everything the government told us about it? Absolutely not.
That's two questions.
The 9/11 Commission? Absolutely not.
I mean, Vic, I think people look at those comments. They look at what you said in the Atlantic, which you say you were misquoted. They look at comments that you've made about the Federal Reserve adding zeros to media companies' bank accounts. And I mean, it looks like you're floating conspiracy theories with this defense of I'm just asking questions.
Well, when you actually quote me, those are my words, and I stand by them. So somebody else quoting me, putting words in my mouth, I have a problem with. But those words I stand by. You want to know why? Because we literally know the FBI, the 9/11 Commission, the U.S. government on down, told us specifically that Saudi Arabia had no involvement. 20-plus years later, quietly declassifying documents showing that not only did Saudi Arabia have involvement, it was a Saudi intelligence agent that received two of those terrorists that crashed planes on 9/11, killing Americans.
But the question was, is 9/11 an inside job? And you didn't say no.
Caitlin,
that's what I think people are looking at.
Caitlin, you know what's really funny? You literally just played that, and you could play it for your audience again. He said, or do you believe everything the government has told us? And my answer was, I do not believe everything the government has told us because they lied.
The point is
and
that
I know
it leaves
this game
the door
comes up,
open.
Caitlin, every time there's an outsider who comes in.
It leaves the door open, Vivek. It leaves the door open, and someone who's a 9/11 truther looks at that and says, that's exactly what I believe. You think the government's lying about 9/11?
It's kind of wild because he's just better on camera in a contentious manner than little Rhonda is. You know what I mean? He is getting cooked right now by Caitlin Collins, especially in the way that, like, CNN and liberal media journalists love putting on their fucking journalist hat on when it's like often going against whatever the State Department has told us. They're so good at ripping people to shreds, and he's still doing a decent job defending himself. When I say cooking him, I don't mean like she's doing a great job dissecting her statements. What I mean is she's immediately, and I would say flagrantly contentious, which these guys never are, no matter who they're talking to. Like, you don't see CNN get this way until it's someone that they have chosen to unload on. Like, you rarely ever see CNN be this combative. Now, maybe she's grilling him because she thinks he's a bullshit candidate and they don't care because they think he's like a clout shark like Andrew Yang and he's not going to win, and then he'll come on the show regardless of how aggressive they are. This is what people wanted news orgs to do since 2016, isn't it? Yeah, it is. And they do it. They do it all the time. The problem is they only do it to like Bernie Sanders, who's an outsider, or they do it to people like fucking Vivek Ramaswamy. And they don't have this kind of energy for, I don't know, when some spokesperson says Havana syndrome is real. They don't have this kind of energy when Democrats or Republicans. Wait, what? Oh, that's awesome. Ramaswamy was already a millionaire. When he accepted Soros Award, he said he needed to pay for law school. Bro, oh, they're coming after him. Dude, Fox News, whoa. This is perhaps the greatest proof, in my opinion, that they're worried about how well he's doing in the polls. That's insane. That is actually fucking nutso. What is happening? No, they aren't. Lamau. I mean, he is. He's pumping in the polls. I don't think he'll win because he's too brown. But what do you mean he's not? He's not an entity now. What are you talking about? In the race, if we're looking at the race and we're looking at numbers, Vivek Ramaswamy is close, is like in striking distance of Little Rhonda, and in some instances he's number 2. So what do you mean? He's hot right now. He is hot right now. Oh, yeah, I saw this one. This one is so dumb. Anyway.
I think the government has systematically and for a very long time lied about 9/11. And I think I'm the only presidential candidate who has told us the truth. Saudi Arabia's involvement. It is absolutely true.
But you don't think that 9/11 was an inside job, correct?
Of course not. And I've never said it. But the media filters do create a lot of falsehoods.
It's not a media filter. You have to stop blaming the media. I'm asking you about comments that you have made.
And I'm telling you that the comments I made, the ones you just played, are indeed what I believe, which was not that 9/11 was an inside job, but that Saudi Arabia absolutely was involved, and our government for 20 years lied to the American people about it.
There was an entire 9/11 Commission report on this.
Yes, and it lied, and it was false. And in fact, you know where that's coming out, Caitlin? There's now a case, a federal case in the Southern District of New York, where the government of Saudi Arabia is being sued by victims of families. That's why this is resurfacing itself. It is relevant, and it turns out
there's a difference in asking questions about Saudi Arabia's involvement and the government's involvement, and then pushing this idea that whenever what your comment about who was on the plane and then was 9/11 an inside job, where you did not say no earlier. That's why it's important to clarify those comments, because otherwise it feels like you're towing the line when it comes to conspiracy theories.
Caitlin, I am guilty as charged that I do not follow the establishment super PAC donor-approved script on these questions, but I am speaking truth, grounded in fact, at every step of the way, and that's what's really elicited something of an anaphylactic reaction.
This is a weird thing to discuss as a Republican. Not really. Post-Trump, they went sour on Bush, remember? Trump attacked Bush and said that Bush was wrong for Iraq. Like, it's pretty funny. Yeah, he was created by a PAC. Yeah, it's pretty funny when Vivek fucking talks about, like, I'm not bought and paid for by super PACs. It's like, bitch, what do you mean? You are literally bought and paid for by super PACs. Did you see how our boy Chris Christie is doing? Historical run. What Chris Christie has done is kind of amazing for a partisan figure. Every single demographic has an equally poor view of him. They just don't represent. They don't want to see a big boy win, dude. I'm sick and tired of it. Americans are not ready for the Christie train, and I hate that. They're not ready for Pound Town Express, okay? Chris Christie would be a better Republican candidate than Donald Trump. But it's just, you know, he'll win if you vote for him, okay? That's my advocacy for Chris Christie for today. Isn't Christie a crackhead? No, you're mistaking him with another fat mayor who Chris Christie was never even a mayor, but a governor is kind of like a mayor if you want to Think about it that way. You're talking about Rob Ford in Canada, who was also fat, yes, but that's it. Or Doug Ford. How can you be a crack addict and fat? Listen, he did it, okay? He was able to do it. You got to watch this about the anthrax stuff. Oh, Philly ended a 9/11 letters of death only 12 days ago. Oh, my God. We'll watch that
the
after
kind
this.
we saw in 2016 against a different candidate. But this time I'm going to be grounded in principles and conviction, not just vengeance and grievance, which is
you say
exactly
you're
how we
grounded
will
in evidence.
reunite
That's
this
just
country.
simply what we were asking for. But Vivek Ramaswamy will have to leave it.
One of the Republicans who is defending Trump is...
Oh, Vivek Ramaswamy talking about visiting Putin and turning parts of Ukraine over to Russia? What the fuck?
Vivek Ramaswamy. And today, a memo from Ron DeSantis' super PAC laid out some advice for the Florida governor ahead of next week's debate. Among the suggestions, defend Donald Trump, but, quote, take a sledgehammer to Ramaswamy. And joining me now is the candidate mentioned in that memo, Vivek Ramaswamy. He's giving a speech at the Nixon Library tonight. Welcome, Mr. Ramaswamy. Appreciate you joining us.
It's good to see you, Jim. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, let's get right to this. A pro-DeSantis super PAC, I'm sure you've seen this, has posted documents online that show DeSantis' upcoming debate strategy, and that includes not only attacks on President Biden as well as media, but instructions to, quote, hammer Ramaswamy. Are you preparing to be hammered?
You know, I have been prepared for that for a lot of my life, and I'm prepared to take that on. The truth is I'm an outsider in this race, and I think that is threatening a lot of the professional politicians, understandably. A guy like me is not supposed to be in this race, according to
Like, I love getting hammered. Hammer me up, baby.
their book. I'm approaching my debate strategy a little bit differently. I think many times if you don't have a message, you look to attack other candidates. I'm preferring to stand for my own message, asking the question, what?
And apparently his message is what? Giving over parts of Ukraine? I love this because, like, we'll see how this goes. Like I've said already, speaking about Ukraine, for like beyond what Donald Trump has said, is so dumb. It is not a winning message no matter what. Okay? It's not. Because you're going to piss people off no matter what you fucking say about Ukraine. Okay? That's why Donald Trump always is like, I'll end it. I'll end it. I'll have one conversation and I'll end it. Okay? Anything beyond that and you're going to get fucking cooked. Okay? You're going to get eviscerated. You're going to get annihilated. There's no reason to ever bring it up.
What are we running to? And I think if we're guided by that purpose, the attacks from the other candidates are not going to stop me.
And the latest Fox polling shows you've gained more ground since June than any other candidate. Why are you gaining ground while candidates like Ron DeSantis are struggling to catch on?
I think the reality is I'm unconstrained in speaking the truth. There are many forces at work in both political parties, in the establishment of the Democrat Party and the Republican Party alike, that constrains what candidates can actually say. A lot of that comes from the donor class. In the Republican Party, you have a lot of super PAC puppets. I'm not one of them. I am a patriot who speaks the truth. I am independent. I'm putting my own money into this campaign precisely to avoid taking a tin can with a hat in hand, asking a bunch of donors for permission to run.
He's trying to avoid the top of the hour ad break, okay? Which comes at the top of every hour. If you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe. That's what he's actually trying to avoid. Little does he know, there is a super PAC working in your favor. It's called Gifted Subs. The super PAC Gifted Subs will allow you to avoid the top of the hour ad break by gifting you a sub. If you're lucky, you can receive one. Here's the 3-minute ad break now.
Run. And I think that's a very different model from many of the other professional politicians in this race. And the good news is voters across our country, in our base, they can tell the difference between somebody who's actually sharing their own convictions versus somebody who's parroting off talking points served up to them 15 minutes or 15 days before a debate. I think the reality is also the message of my campaign is resonating. Shut down the administrative state, declare independence from China, grow the economy, revive national pride, revive our national identity itself. We as conservatives, we can't just be complacent with criticizing the radical Biden agenda. That's boring. It's trite at a certain point in time. We have to stand for a vision of our own. And I think I'm the only candidate who's
I
actually
love his face while listening to this. He's like,
offering that. I think that's a big part of why we've been successful.
Let's talk about China. You talked about China. You proposed to radio host Hugh Hewitt this week that the U.S. should help Taiwan deter a Chinese invasion until the U.S. has achieved, quote, semiconductor independence. Does it really serve our long-term interest to say we support territorial integrity until a country is no longer useful to us?
I think that moving from strategic ambiguity to strategic clarity is actually a good thing for the United States to both advance our interests and to avoid war, as well as to be a more trusted partner. I don't think it's credible when we make hollow proclamations to defend democracy or to defend territorial sovereignty as a principle when in fact we choose that principle selectively anyway. I think it's far more credible for us to be honest, to say
China can invade Taiwan after 2028 if I'm elected.
that I will, as the next U.S. president, I stand for advancing American interests, period. That allows other nations to actually trust us. Just as we can trust them to follow their self-interest, they can trust us to follow ours.
But are you
Move
setting
from
a
this
signal
model
that
of
an allied...
neoconservatism or liberal hegemony?
But are you sending a signal that an allied democracy
Please.
could be taken over by another power just because they're no longer making something that we need?
Well, let's get real, Jim. I mean, the fact of the matter is our current posture towards Taiwan is that the U.S. embraces the one China policy in the status quo. The standard protocol is a U.S. president isn't even supposed to pick up a phone call from the leader of Taiwan. In fact, when Trump did it, they laughed at him as though he was an outsider rube. And so the reality is that line of reasoning that somehow you're now going to call them an allied nation selectively to push back on my vision of strategic clarity is just a farce and betrays exactly what our current posture is in the first place. What I'm bringing to our foreign policy is honesty that will advance our interests. I'm moving from strategic ambiguity to be strategically very clear that we will defend Taiwan until we achieve semiconductor independence.
This is such a funny fucking take because it's like, again, who's this for is the question you have to ask. Like, in one breath, I feel like what are you doing? I feel like you are trying to tailor this messaging to like globe heads on Twitter. Like dudes with a globe emoji on their fucking profiles or something, where it's like, that's right, I'm going to go against like decades-long U.S. policy on China is two different two systems, one country, and I'm just gonna do it specifically for the semiconductor production, and I'm going to throw that in the ground. Like, you're already losing. You're completely losing everybody because one, it's fucking boring. Quite frankly, most Americans don't even think about this unless they're like really, really invested. Just say fuck China and move on. Like, Americans don't hate China because they want to give Taiwan independence, you fucking idiot. Like, no one gives a shit about that. Okay? Americans hate China because they're Asian and they're threatening American hegemonic power. Okay? You have completely missed the mark if you're like, well, I'm riding for Taiwanese independence. Like if you personally understand as a Republican that America's interest in Ukraine is iffy, like the American voter base's interest in Ukraine is so iffy that you can get away with saying insane shit like, I'm just going to give parts of Ukraine over to Russia, okay? Which, by the way, again, really awful way to message around this. It just doesn't make any sense that he would turn around and say, I care about Taiwanese independence. Like, no one in America gives a fuck. It's just like they hate Chinese people. Yeah, we care about Taiwan because we hate China, not the other way around. I know exactly.
Independence. I expect that to happen by the end of my first term, by 2028.
But then China can have Taiwan.
Our commitments necessarily will change.
But then China can have
Taiwan. To be clear,
Taiwan.
after that, by being clear, not necessarily. What that really means is Taiwan, between now and then, can actually spend what it should be spending on national defense. Taiwan spends less than 2% of GDP on its military. That is shameful. Taiwan needs to be spending over 4% of its own GDP.
Brother, the question to you is, are you running for office in Taiwan? Like like, I know that as the United States of America, he's not like, we have a tremendous amount of power over what Taiwan does. Okay, we do. But it's just funny that he's like running to what? Fucking increase Taiwanese budgets for their own, like increase Taiwan's very own budgets for their own defense against China. Like, what the fuck? None of this fucking makes sense. I don't know. I don't know who this is for. Like, I don't understand the argument that he's making, but I also don't really understand who the fuck is like, oh, thank God, I'm a Republican primary voter, and now I know Ramaswamy's take on Taiwanese right to self-defense. like no one cares. Am I wrong? I feel like people don't give a shit about that. Beyond semiconductor development, sure, but also like you're crossing your wires a little bit, because you're taking a position on foreign policy, and you're doing it in a way where you're like openly stating certain things that you're not supposed to. There's a reason why, since Nixon, what the American government officially says about China versus what it actually does when it comes to policy is entirely different. You know what I mean? I've heard that he wants, what was it? He wants everyone in Taiwan to have a gun or something. That's what I've heard. Is that real? Because I feel like he's just he's just like a secret mainland China operative who wants to destroy Taiwan from within. You know what I mean? Oh yeah, he did. That's so funny, dude. I love that. Thank you, Vivek. Look at this. GOP presidential candidate calls for guns in every Taiwanese household to prevent Chinese invasion. He's like, we want more Taiwanese school shootings to happen. This will certainly defend Taiwan and Taiwan's interests. We'll talk about the retraction in a second. Like, I don't think Vivek is trying to win. I think he knows. He's smart enough to know that he's not gonna win, right? So let's say he's going for a cabinet position. What cabinet position is he getting for this kind of foreign policy?
But by being strategically clear, we give Taiwan a chance to build up its own defense capabilities, and China will also know that it is absolutely not in China's interest, not any rational actor in China would want to make that move before 2028. In the meantime, what am I going to do? Achieve semiconductor independence for our nation and also build up our own homeland defense capabilities.
Oh, he's saying, wait, hold on. He's misunderstood it. No, I think he's saying Taiwan's on his own. Like right now, we're just, I'll hold in a posture as we move up our semiconductor manufacturing capabilities, and then I'm fucking selling Taiwan down the river. Oh no, that still doesn't. Okay, first of all, that also doesn't make sense. I feel like now, this is why I said mentioning this kind of foreign policy in clear terms is like dumb, because I don't think Americans give a shit. Like, he's like, yeah, Taiwan needs to defend itself. We're done defending Taiwan. Taiwan will defend itself once we figure out our semiconductor facilities here in America.
That's something that's badly lacking. Super EMP defenses, cyber defenses, nuclear missile defenses.
My conspiracy theory is that we will find out he's backed by increasing Hindu nationalist forces in India who are trying to gain influence Israel style. I hope that's not true, but it's likely. That's an interesting take. I think this works a bit, to be honest. He basically tells the people America first, China bad. Yeah.
But if we're at that point by 2028, along with semiconductor independent, then no, I don't expect to want to send our sons and daughters in this country to die to fight over somebody else's territorial dispute. And I think that that's exactly what this Chinese Civil War dating back to 1949 was all about. There are two reasons why China might go after Taiwan. One is to lord over an economic gun over the United States. I refuse to let that happen. But a second is sorting out business dating back to 1949 between Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong. That's not something that I'm going to send our sons and daughters to settle.
And you've also suggested that Vladimir Putin be allowed to keep parts of you.
Okay, so he's not. Okay, he's not like. God damn it! I can't believe I'm saying this. I mean, he's on its face. He's not wrong. But also, I don't know if this is a popular take. Who is he trying to win over? Like, is he trying to appeal to like the 8 MAGA communists or something? Like, who the fuck? Who's even voting that cares about this? I hope he becomes Secretary of State. This would be so fucking funny. Maoist third world is Vivek. Like, no, I misunderstood. He actually isn't even tailoring this conversation towards Reddit, because Redditors care about like Taiwanese independence. Reddit hates China and therefore cares about Taiwanese independence because like they've been geared towards not a negative perspective on China, because you can't say, especially if you're a liberal, you can't say like fuck China, I hate China. You have to say I hate China because they're doing this or that. I hate China because they're fucked up on Taiwan. I hate China because they're trying to take over the South China Sea. I hate China because of the treatment of Uyghurs in Xinjiang, right? Like you can't just like say, I hate China because they are threatening America's hegemonic power position. Like no one's going to fucking say that. So he's like way too honest about Taiwan's situation. So I don't really know what he would win over. I don't know what he would win by saying like, we're going to withdraw support from Taiwan. We're going to pump Taiwan with guns and then we're going to withdraw support altogether. Let God sort it out.
Ukraine as part of a way to solve that conflict. What if he wants parts of Poland?
You leave
next?
out the most important part of that deal.
More of Ukraine next.
You
aren't you letting some of these authoritarian leaders off
what actually advances? Far from it. I think that the Biden administration is so stubbornly attached to the idea of getting Xi Jinping to drop Vladimir Putin. What I think we need to be doing is get Vladimir Putin to drop Xi Jinping. Just like Nixon went to China in 1972, I think Putin is like the new Mao. I will visit Moscow and I will pull Russia out of its military alliance with China. The Russia-China military alliance.
Bro, he's on crack, dude. That's so awesome.
Is the single greatest military threat that we face today. Hypersonic missile capabilities, nuclear capabilities in Russia, far ahead of us or China. A naval capacity in China ahead of ours, combined with an economy that we depend on for our modern way of life. Those two nations are in a military alliance with one another, and nobody in either political party is talking about it. Worst of all, our engagement in Ukraine.
Okay, I take it back. He's awesome. His foreign policy takes are fucking incredible.
Is further driving Russia into China's arms. So my foreign policy centers on weakening that alliance.
He is like I don't know. This is like we've hit new levels of foreign policy commentary. He's like, I don't even know. I've never even heard like, I guess this is like kind of a Tucker Carlson approach, which is that like we are going to give parts of Ukraine to Russia and then we're going to use Russia against China. Like, why the fuck would Russia do that?
Alliance. That advances American interests.
You would let Putin have
that
parts
is how
of
we
Ukraine.
actually secure peace.
But you would let Putin have parts of Ukraine.
Freeze the current lines. I would freeze the.
Tadek, that was you. I didn't know. I didn't know who sent me the fruit basket. Thank you. Thank you for the fruit basket, brother. See you soon.
Current lines of control, and that would leave parts of the Donbas region with Russia. I would also further make a commitment that NATO will not admit Ukraine to NATO. But there are even greater wins that I will get for the United States in return. The top of the list. No, our goal should not be for Putin to lose. Our goal should be for America to win. That's what we have forgotten in this country, is that driving Russia into the ground is not a U.S. strategic goal. A U.S. strategic.
Yeah, he's wrong about that. Like, I think Americans don't give a fuck about Russia. I think Americans don't give a fuck about what happens to China. Like, is this Starfield something serious? No, I'm not looking at early Starfield reviews, bro. Come on.
goal is to secure peace and prosperity for Americans. And so, you know what? I do think many of those military resources being used to protect against an invasion.
Like the idea that, what, gaming frogs keep trying? Wait, what do you mean gaming frogs keep trying? I fucking gamed earlier, and I'm low-key thinking about going back into it, because whenever I get some dubs in a fucking video game, I get hooked on it. Anyway, but that's separate. Gaming frogs ate in the middle of the day.
Invasion across somebody else's border halfway around the world should be used to protect against the invasion across our own southern border right here at home. And in the meantime, yes, we need to pull Russia apart from China instead of driving Russia further into China's hands. And I think we have a foreign policy establishment in both parties, frankly, Republican Party and Democratic Party alike, that behaves as though we're still in the Cold War of the last century, forgetting that the USSR does not exist anymore and that the real threat we face today is communist China, which is that much stronger when Vladimir Putin is in Xi Jinping's camp.
Yeah, Russia is a really strong ally that we need desperately on our side. Isn't this war the United States' fault as well? I don't even know what the fuck he's saying here, to be honest with you. I'm confused. He's too smart for me to understand. My caveman brain doesn't comprehend why he's saying these things.
Be about the personality of one individual. The movement has got to be about what are you trying to...
Like, especially because there's two reasons why I'm confused by it. Because on the one hand, I'm like, why the fuck is he saying this? Like, who? On the other, it's why the fuck is he saying these things? And secondly, who is he saying these things for? Just say you want Russia to lose and you want China to lose, right? Isn't that what you're supposed to say that, right? I don't think the hogs give a shit that much about Russia. Like, I think at the end of the day, yeah, sure, there's like a lot of WhatsApp, Telegram groups that have like broken boomers' brains about how Vladimir Putin is like a based defender of Christian rights or something, right? But those guys are tiny. Like they're so marginal. I think other than like the far right who don't really vote and don't necessarily have the numbers to vote, I don't think you're going to win over the broader American majority by being like, we're going to defend Russia. Like, there is too much Red Scare and too much anti-communist propaganda for Americans to unmarry Russia from the USSR and communism in general. Like, they don't give a fuck. They hate Russia. Most Americans hate Russia. He wants to cut off any and all Chinese allies to further isolate them from global trade networks, I think. Yeah, I mean, that would be not great for trade in general, and I don't think he'd be able to do that regardless, but...
Damn, this guy's good.